Hello grade 10s and welcome back to yet again another video on grade 10 content. Today we'll be looking at algebraic expressions still. However, we'll be looking at factorization. This is simply the reverse process of expansion, which we did in the previous video. Right, so under factorization, we are simply going back from what we started with. So without any waste of time, let's just quickly look at the types of factorizations that we are going to be looking at. Right, given any type of an expression or given a particular expression, these are the techniques or the tools that one can use to actually factorize a particular expression. And again, which tool you use will depend on the type of expression that you are going to be given. So the first one will be a common factor. So a common factor, this is simply a term or a number or a variable that is common to all the terms. So when you take out the common factor, it's more like dividing by the common factor. The second one is grouping, factorization by grouping, factorizing a difference of two squares, and then factorizing quadratic trinomials, and then lastly the sum and difference of two cubes. If you remember well, we actually did one problem in the previous video where we spoke about the sum of two cubes, and I further said we are going to be looking at this one in detail in the next video. So definitely we are going to look at one in this video. Right, so I'm just going to take you through each by using an example. The first one that we spoke about, we said it's factorization by taking out a common factor. So grade 10s, pretty much any question that comes on factorization, the first thing that you can ask yourself is, can I take out the common factor? If the answer is yes, and then you start with that one. Right, and then if it fails, you are going to follow the order until you get to a tool that is definitely going to work for you. Right, as a first example, let's consider an example where we have 2a minus 4. Right, so a question would come, factorize. So factorize is the reverse of expansion, so we actually need to have brackets put in here. Right, so remember I just said moments ago that a common factor is simply a number or a variable that is common in all of them. Right, so I see there are numbers, there are two terms, and then there is a number that is common in both of them. That number would be a 2. So I would just write down my common factor is simply a 2. Then do I have a variable that is common to both of them? The answer would be no, because the only variable that I see here is an a, but I don't have an a here. Right, so once you have established your 2 as a common factor, you just write it out as your bracket and then you start simplifying. And how does one do that? I always like to think as you're going to take every term and then you are going to divide it by the common factor. Right, so what do I mean every term? This would be term number 1, which is 2a, divide by the common factor, which is 2. And then mathematically these 2 will definitely divide out. Then I'm left with a 4. I mean an a. Similarly, I take the second term. The second term in this case is negative 4. I divide it with a 2. Right. The method that I showed you in the previous video for multiplication also applies for division. So you first divide the signs, the numbers, and the variables. So in this case, I only have the numbers. So negative divided by a positive, that will give us a negative. And then 4 divided by a 2, that's definitely a 2. Right, and then once we have it like this, we have actually factorized our expression. And for you to check if this is correct, just multiply it back. If you multiply it back, you should get what you started with. So if we take positive times a positive, we'll get a positive. 2 times an a, we get 2a. Positive times a negative, we'll get the negative. And then 2 times 2, we definitely get the 4. So that's an example of taking out a common factor. Let's look at the second one, factorization by grouping. So if you are given an expression, the first tool fails, which is a common factor, and then you can check if maybe you can group your terms. Right, suppose you are given 6x plus a plus 2ax plus 3. Right, so a good tool that one needs to, a skill rather, that one needs for this type of tool is to check if maybe I can take out the common factor which fails. I have a 6, an a 2, a 3, so there's definitely not a common factor. So the next one that one can consider is grouping. Can I group my terms so that I can have maybe a common factor? The answer would be yes in this one. So if you check, I have an a, I have a 2ax, so these two can be grouped together. Then I have a 6x, I have a 3. These two can also be grouped together. Why? Because they have a common factor of 3. These ones have a common factor of a. So grouping, the first thing one needs to do is rearrange these terms. We'll have 6x, we have a positive 3, there is our positive 3, we have a positive a plus a. Right, in this one also we can rearrange this one to start with, okay, it's fine, we can just leave it as it is. So we'll have a plus 2ax. Right, so we have just grouped our terms, and then from the terms that we've grouped together, we can see we have something in the first bracket. We have a common factor, we have a 6, we have a 3. Our common factor in these two will definitely be a 3. Again, we are going to do what we did as up here. It's more like when you take out the common factor, it's more like dividing by it throughout. However, the division does not disappear. Right, so we'll have 3, and then we'll take our first term, which is 6x. No need to show this, great terms. Divide by the first common factor, our common factor. So we'll have 3, 6 divided by 3, we have a 2, and then the x, because it does not cancel with anything. We do the same with the second one. We'll have plus 3 divided by 3, then a positive divided by a positive leaves us with a positive, and then 3 divided by 3 is a 1. And then we go to the second term, we take out the positive a. Taking out the positive a will leave us with 1 plus 2x. Right, then now, okay, we actually had to rearrange these ones. It's really not a train smash. Right, so if we rearrange the second bracket, we can have 3 into 2x plus 1 plus, we leave the a outside, and then if we rearrange this one, both terms are positive, so it doesn't matter which one you start with. We can have 2x plus 1. Right, again, ladies and gentlemen, you will note that in these two brackets we still have a common factor of 2x plus 1. So we have a common factor of 2x plus 1. We can still take it out. Taking it out as a common factor, we'll have 2x plus 1 as a binomial. Then if we take 2 from the first bracket, 2x plus 1, we divide it by the common factor 2x plus 1. These two will disappear or cancel out, and then we are left with just a 3 in the second bracket. Then we go to the second term, which is a, not just a, but positive a into 2x plus 1 divided by 2x plus 1. Again, these two will cancel out. We are left with a positive a. Then we are left with a positive a. Ladies and gentlemen, this will be your answer to factorizing by grouping. So the key concept here is to first group your terms. After grouping your terms, you take out the common factor in the grouped pairs. Then once you have taken out the common factor in the grouped pairs, all you need to do is check if maybe there's still a further common factor that you can take after you factorize your two terms, like we did with this one. We took out a 2x plus 1 is a common factor here, which resulted to having 2x plus 1 multiplied by 3 plus a. Right, and then let's look at the next one, which we said was going to be the difference of two squares. Right, so as the technique suggests, as the name of the technique suggests, difference of two squares. So we definitely need to have squares here. Difference of 2 squares. So it means we have 2 squares that are actually subtracted. A typical example would be a squared minus b squared. Right, ladies and gentlemen, this one is straightforward. All one needs here is to remember what you are going to have. You are going to write the factors of a squared is simply a and a. The factors of b squared are also b and b. What one needs to remember for this one is that the first bracket is going to be positive, the second bracket is going to be negative, or vice versa. It doesn't matter the order, but what is important is that one of the two brackets must be positive, the other negative. So you'll have a plus and a minus here. Then that's how you factorize the difference of two squares. Let's take a typical example. Suppose now I give you the following example. We have p squared minus 4x squared. Right, from a distance one would see that this is definitely a difference of two squares because we have a square which is p squared. We also have a 4, although it's not written as a squared, it is a perfect square, and then we have x squared. Right, this is a term which is also a perfect square. Right, how one would do this, one can go to say we have p squared minus, and then you write 4. We all know that 4 as a square is 2 squared, so you can rewrite this 4 as 2 squared x squared. So all one needs is rewrite this into two brackets. Factors of p squared are p and p, then factors of these bases without the square, it's 2x and 2x. Remember, because this is a difference of two squares, one of the brackets is positive, the other is negative. This time around I'm going to deliberately say this one is negative and this one is positive, so it doesn't matter the order, but what matters is that the signs are different. Right, that's our difference of two squares. Let's look at factorizing a quadratic trinomial. Factorizing a quadratic trinomial. So quadratic trinomial. Right, one needs to understand that a quadratic trinomial takes the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Right, without any further ado, I just want to explain this one with an example. Suppose we are given 3x squared plus 2x minus 1. Right, so to factorize this, we are going to have two brackets like we did with the others, and then the most important one is finding factors of the first term and finding factors of the last term. So the factors of the first term that are going to give us 3x squared, so we'll have 3x this side and then we'll have x this side. Then the factors of the last term, such that when we multiply them they give us 1, when we add them they give us 2. Right, and then taking into account that we have these 3 right here, so obviously two numbers that you will multiply together to give you 1 are simply 1 and 1. But how does this 1 and 1 give us 2? So we'll definitely have 1 and 1. Then we look at the last sign. Our last sign is negative, so it means that if the last sign is negative, it means one of the brackets must be positive, the other must be negative. Right, so and how do you then decide to say which bracket is positive, which one is negative? So between these two factors, the bigger factor between these two will take the sign of the middle term. Right, so let's check our factor here. Because we have a 3, our factor in this one, if we were to solve, it was going to be 1 over 3. So this one is smaller, meaning this one is bigger. So it means the bigger factor in this case, which is this one, will be positive, and then this one will be negative. Right, grade 10s, I will further explain this with two other examples when I look into problems. Right, let's move on to the sum and difference of two cubes. Sum and difference of 2 cubes. Right, this one, just like we did with the difference of 2 squares, one needs to remember the order. Let's start with the sum. For the sum, we'll have a cubed plus b cubed. So to factorize this, you'll have 2 brackets, one smaller, one bigger. And then the smaller will be a binomial, the second one will be a trinomial. And how does one factorize this one? It is simply straightforward. If you have a plus here, the first bracket will be a plus. Therefore, it's going to be these two terms without the cubes. And then it means you'll have a plus b. And then the second bracket, you'll have these two terms being your first and last term with squares. So it means you'll have a squared to the side, and then you'll have b squared to the side. And then one can remember to say the last term will be positive. Then now to decide on the second term, because you have a plus here, this will be negative. And then how do you decide on the second term? You simply take the first term, the first factor, you multiply it with the second factor. So it means it's going to be a times b, which gives us ab. So one actually needs to find a way to remember this one. Then let's look at the difference. So the difference, we have almost the same thing. Our difference will look something like a cubed minus b cubed. Right, to simplify this or to factorize this, again, a binomial with a trinomial. Then this time you'll have a negative because we have a negative. These factors without cubes. Then these factors with squares. Then always the last term will be positive, and then the middle term will be the opposite of the first bracket sign. So if you have a minus here, then you'll have a plus here. And the middle term will always be the product of these two. So you'll have a, b. Again, ladies and gentlemen, one needs to just remember this one. So I'll just pause here, and then I'll post in the video which actually deals with the work of how to apply these techniques in activities or in the exam. So please stay tuned, as I will be posting the video very soon.